Mr. Mahomes,
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, sir. I can hear you loud and clear. How are you?
Fine. How are you doing?
Man, I can't complain. And like I said, I do appreciate you taking time out of your busy schedule to jump on, especially with the football season right around the corner. So, like I said, man, I've been a big fan. I mean, look, obviously it goes without saying, and I'm sure if you had a nickel for every time someone said they're a fan of your son, you'd never run out of money. But the one thing that really kind of has that I've just been impressed by, and really, look, I'm a lifelong Chiefs fan. I'm 42 years old. I got a 15-year-old son myself. But more importantly, I've always been fascinated in how you went about you and Pat's mom gone about raising Pat, and just kind of how being a former professional athlete yourself, having worked with professional athletes. I know the kind of the stresses and demands that are put on you guys, and so for you to be able to do what you've done with Pat as a father has been super impressive. So I want to get to that, but before we do, I guess first and foremost, I mean, let's call it what it is. We are in the before we get to some football talk. I mean, we're what, a month and a half away from both the MLB playoffs. You're no stranger to the MLB playoffs yourself. I guess my first question for you is, being a former pitcher, are you, when you heard about these rule changes, your initial thoughts on the pitch clock, and what does baseball need to do, or are you satisfied with what baseball's done to try to get into that same conversation when we talk about the marketing of the football and of basketball? Has baseball done enough?
Well, I think they're throwing ideas up against the wall right now. They haven't really decided on what's going to work, what's not going to work. So we're kind of in the experimental stage.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the pitch clock, that wouldn't have been a problem for me. I was always a guy that worked pretty quick and wanted to be right back on the mound and make the hitter think that I was ready to go right after him. So that part wouldn't have bothered me. The one thing that does concern me is the pickoff rule. I don't like the
Okay.
fact that you can only throw over a couple of times. And it seemed like to me that would tell the runner that he's got free reign to take off at any time, because if you don't pick him off that third time, then it's basically a balk. So,
Yeah.
that would concern me a little bit.
When you look at the landscape of baseball right now, Rob Manfred catches a lot of flack. And, look, I get it. He says some kind of off the wall, goofy things, but look, I mean, again, I'm not quite the baseball purist that you are, but I mean, I gotta feel like, look, I think he's generated a lot of discussion about baseball than we've heard in quite some time with versus previous regimes.
Yeah, he's doing a pretty good job. I actually work with the youth down there for MLB. We do something called a Hank Aaron Invitational, which we have down at Vero Beach, which is
Okay.
2 weeks with like 240 kids, like 120 each week. And he actually comes down there and speaks and kind of updates us on the stuff that they're trying to do. Him and Tony Clark, also with the Players Association, and yeah, they got the ideas going pretty much like they want to. They're starting to get some buzz. It's just a matter of figuring out, like I said, once again, what's going to work and what's not, because you even heard things about automatic strikes being called, or
Yeah.
about much like a robot and stuff like that. So I
Right.
don't know how much. I don't know much how much the players or the fans are going to like that. So it's just a trial basis right now.
You spent a couple years overseas, and you've played with you've played with some I mean, historical franchise. When we think about the Mets, when we think about the Red Sox, when you look at that Mets team this year, I mean, and I don't think it's hyperbolic to say that the Mets might be the biggest disappointment in baseball, just for the simple fact that when you plop out the kind of money that Steve Cohen did, um, what when you look at it outside of injuries, and obviously, when the WBC hit and they lost Diaz, and I don't know if that was kind of an ominous sign of what was to come. When you look at that Mets team, I guess, A, how much do you still follow the Mets and the other teams that you played with? And two, what do you see as, kind of, injuries aside, was the biggest reason for why the Mets really just never quite became the team we thought they were going to be before the season started?
Well, first of all, I'm a big, big, big Mets fan. I
Okay.
actually grew up there. I played in the old timers game. I do fantasy camp with them sometimes. They've always been my favorite team since I was a little kid. That was who I hoped I got
Okay.
drafted and who I thought I was going to get drafted by. But their situation that they've had this year, I think it's just a matter, you're on a dangerous ground when you're spending that kind of money and bringing all these different guys in to, get some kind of chemistry. And to me, it feels like they just have never had real chemistry, this year. You mentioned the injuries, but injuries are part of the game. Every
Right.
team is going to go through injuries. So I just think it's just, you got too many Chiefs in there. Everybody has to play a role. I know in '99 and 2000 when we were doing all that winning, and we had a lot of great ball players, but everybody kind of knew their role. I knew that I was going to be the lone man. I was going to come in and pitch. I was going to pitch a little bit short. Dennis Cook knew his role. Turk knew his role. Benitez, who came to close it, Franco started setting up. So, it was a deal where everybody knew what their role was and they played their role. But when you got that many good players and kind of all of them want to be the alpha, it makes it pretty hard to go out there and be consistent and win a lot of ball games.
I've heard you tell a story where you had accepted it, or you'd been offered a scholarship to Arkansas to play baseball there, coming out of high school. You also had gotten invited to play, walk on to the basketball team as well. But then you get drafted in the 6th round by the Twins, a little lower than you expected. But from an article I read, it basically said that, the day that everybody came, you kind of had a rough day that day, but which to the Twins' chagrin, worked out beautifully for them. But you thought you were going to get drafted as an infielder or outfielder. What was kind of that conversation like when they said, no, we want you to be a pitcher?
Well, actually, I accepted an offer to play basketball at the University of Arkansas.
Okay, so it was a basketball scholarship.
Yeah, basketball scholarship, and I was going to be allowed to play on the baseball team as well.
Okay, gotcha.
And I'd end up being Mr. Basketball, runner-up for Mr. Basketball in the state of Texas my senior year, and me and Oliver Miller and Todd Day, a guy by the name of Benford Williams. He went to the University of Texas.
Okay.
He ended up at College University of Texas, but he was from Beaumont, and he actually won it. I was going to, me, Todd Day, Lee Mayberry, Oliver Miller, all of us all were doing like the basketball tour, and we all signed at the same time. We were all going to go to Arkansas to play Arkansas, kind of our Fab Five before Michigan had their Fab Five, but I ended up getting drafted as a pitcher in the 6th round by the Twins, and I wasn't too happy about it. I wanted to play a position. Everybody wanted me to play outfield or a little bit of infield, except the Twins. The Twins wanted me to pitch, and that ended up being the team that took me one pick before the Mets. And so I had decided that I wasn't going to play baseball because I did not want to pitch. And then my father kind of convinced me into going on and taking a chance and playing the baseball. And if it didn't work out, that I could always fall back on the basketball. Yeah. So I went and signed, and it started off rough. My first start in pro ball, I pitched a third of an inning, and I gave up 9 runs. I'll never forget, my ERA was 243, and I remember calling my father on the payphone and telling him I was coming back home, that I wasn't going to play baseball because I didn't want to pitch. But I ended up sticking it out, and then everything turned around, and it went pretty quickly from there.
But the one thing too, though, just from looking at your background, I mean, look, you got a mother that was paralyzed at a very when you were a very early age. You had a dad that worked 6-7 days a week for an oil and gas company, and so did you kind of expect when you called your dad to tell him, hey, look, man, this ain't going the way I thought it was going to go, for him to say, look, you're coming home's not an option right now?
Pretty much, yeah. But sometimes you need that kick in the butt. You need to hear that. You need to hear that to get your mind back focused right. I knew I could play baseball with the guys. It just, I hadn't pitched a lot, so I didn't really know a lot about pitching. But then there comes a point where you got to grind.
Well, and I guess that's what's surprising to me is the fact that, like I said, you thought you were going to go in there as a position player, and what was it the Twins saw that they decided, no, we want to make this dude a pitcher instead?
Well, it was kind of a crazy story. Growing up, I played with this this guy by the name of Brad Bryan, and he was kind of like the pitcher all the way up. He was the guy that pitched all the innings, and since we were young, and he threw a lot of curveballs, he threw fastballs, he really knew the game, knew how to pitch, and it just got to the point. It was his senior year, and he pitched every other game, and we had another guy that pitched the other games, and I played short and played outfield, and we had a coach that had kind of come on my freshman year to take over the baseball program because they were going to give the baseball program up, but he was a football coach that coached, and he basically coached out of a book. He wasn't a baseball player or nothing like that. So
right,
me and this guy Brad Bryan, we basically coached the team. And he just kind of let us, kind of tell him what to do and all this stuff, and we had a really, really good team. And Brad had pretty much thrown his arm out and was starting to get hit pretty hard, every time he went out there. And he called him out to the mound and told him that he wasn't going to pitch anymore. And Coach looked at me and said, "Can you pitch?" I said, "Well, I pitched before." And, so he said, "All right, well, you go to the mound and you're pitching, and Brad, you go with the short." And so I went to the mound, and all the scouts, of course, were there to watch me hit and do all that stuff. I was second in the state that year in hitting. And, of course, they had their radar guns. And I guess when I was pitching that day, I was throwing like 92, 93. So then when we would go to the games, if I wasn't pitching that day, then they would make me the Twins would make me throw bullpens on the side, and they would play all the bullpens or whatever. And I guess they liked what they saw and drafted me as a pitcher.
And the rest is history, as they say. So I got to ask, because one of my good friends is former Minnesota Viking, Henry Thomas, who was up in Minnesota at the same time you were back in the early 90s. Were you involved, and since you being the hooper that you were, did you get involved in any of those pickup games over at the U.S. Swim and Fitness over there in Minneapolis?
I used to go over to the Target Center. They had just built the Target Center down there, and I used to go down there and play with all the guys. Honestly, I used to destroy the guys over there. Yeah, I played with Doug West and
the Timberwolves guys.
Yeah, all the Timberwolves guys. I used to tear them up on Saturdays. We go down there, and it would be me, Willie Banks, a couple other baseball players, and a couple friends I'd met there in Minneapolis, and we'd go play 5-on-5 there at the Target Center. And it was funny because the coaches would be there watching, and we would go down there and tear them up.
So and nobody ever reached out to you and said, "Hey, and I don't know how big 10-day contracts were in the early 90s, but nobody ever said, "Hey, since you got that sweet jumper, why don't you go ahead and give it a run?"
Yeah, actually, the Timberwolves coach, he talked to me a lot about that after we went on strike. After we went on strike there in '94, he invited me to come over to camp and to play, in the camp with him. And I went for like a day or two, and just told him, I said, "Well, I'm in the big league, so." I better chill. I don't think I can do both of them at the same time. So, but we were on strike, so I thought about it for a minute.
You were trying to be the reverse, Michael, is what you were doing, going from baseball to basketball.
Well, I always wanted to play basketball, so yeah, it did pique my interest to go over there.
Did you ever play against Prince while you were in Minnesota?
No, I did not. I saw Prince many a times. I've never actually played a basketball game against him.
So go ahead.
I did play against Jerome and some of the guys from Morris Day and their group in the time. And Jerome's a pretty dirty player.
So did you ever get an invite to Paisley Park?
Been to Paisley Park, been to First Ave, and he used to have a place called Glam Slam, which was the popular spot where everybody went downtown. So, yeah, I've been to all three. Like I said, I've seen Prince many times. Just never got a chance to hoop with him and eat pancakes.
Because the rumor is, and like my boy Henry said, he goes, the rumors are true that Prince could ball a little bit, but he was just a little dude.
I heard he could. I heard he had a great jump shot. So, like I said, I wasn't fortunate enough to be able to play against him. But, I heard he was a pretty good basketball player.
They say his parties, though, were a little different in the sense that there wasn't usually, at least there weren't supposed to be, drugs and alcohol at the parties.
True. That's true. It was kind of like a rainbow fest or something like that. You just go out there and hang out and talk. And there wasn't a lot of drugs. I imagine there's a little alcohol. People were
Right.
drinking a little bit, but I never saw any drugs or anything like that.
Yeah, no, they say he was a man about discipline, to say the least. Is Minneapolis, and for a kid from East Texas, and I can appreciate, because I spent some years in Beaumont prior to making my way to Houston. Is Minneapolis one of the more underrated professional sports towns?
I think so. Great fans, great arenas.
Yeah.
They're very supportive. When you play at places like New York and Boston and Philadelphia, where the fans can be pretty brutal on you if you're not performing as well. A place like Minneapolis is a very welcome sight, because they're diehard Twins fans, and they're rooting for you to do good because they want to have something to root for. So I always loved it, man. I mean, the Timberwolves were, always decent, pretty good team. The Twins were competitive for a while. You struggled for a while, but then it became back competitive. Right. And then the Vikings, so you had all those, plus you had the Gophers. So I always loved going to Minneapolis, even when I wasn't playing there. It's a very, very clean city, and the people are friendly.
Different kind of cold there.
Oh yeah, but they try to combat it. They got those skywalks, all through the city. So
Okay.
you can walk all the way downtown, eat movies or whatever you want to, and you never go outside. So you might see somebody dressed with shorts and t-shirt on, and it may be 30 below, but you're inside, so it doesn't matter.
It all works out. All right, let's segue into the fact that, like I said, we're going into 2023. Chiefs are looking to repeat. We know what happened the last time the Chiefs tried to repeat, and of course, it didn't work out well, losing to the Tampa Bay Bucks in the Super Bowl. And of course, Pat had probably one of his most difficult games as a professional. And of course, like I said, when your offensive line is struggling like they did that game, when you look at what, going into year 7 and just the hype that's going on, we're coming off the big Netflix quarterback series, a couple moments with you in there as well. Do you still have to pinch yourself and kind of take a step back, and not just as, obviously I know you're as a fan, but as a dad, but just kind of to see what your son has done in just a short amount of time? How surprising is it to you?
Well, it's pretty amazing, some of the stuff that he's already accomplished. I always pictured him as being a pretty good professional athlete. I thought he would do some great things. I just think the timing was so quick that, maybe that kind of shocked me more of it. I know he's determined. I know he does whatever it takes to win. So, I knew he was going to do some things. He was going to win some Super Bowls and stuff like that. It just happened so quickly. I think it caught everybody by surprise. And, coming from Texas Tech and not winning a lot of ball games there, but he played awesome. So I'm glad he got with, the Chiefs and Coach Reed, and having to have a guy like Kelsey and Tyreek, to help him on. And now that Tyreek's gone and he's figured it out, with the other receivers, I'm just looking forward to good things. I mean, the Super Bowl in Tampa, the line broke down a little bit. Patrick was a little injured, and it just happened to be a bad day, and that can happen to anybody on any given Sunday, as we all know. So I know he's more determined than ever to try to get back and to try to win that ball game. So it'll be interesting to watch the whole year just to see how that works out.
The one thing about, and I heard you on an interview a few months back, I think it was an MLB interview, and, you had talked about, you weren't worried about Pat going through the pre-draft process because you knew that once he started, once guys got to know him, once teams got to meet him and see behind the fact that, yes, it was an air raid offense, but there's more to Patrick Mahomes than just being able to, fling the ball 50 yards down the field and make crazy plays. And obviously you were right on the money with that, with the Chiefs picking him number 10 overall. But you also know from your professional athletic background that, timing and location are almost even more important in some cases, depending upon the situation you're in and the coaching and what have you. How important was it for Pat to link up with a guy like an Andy Reid, who had been a quarterback guru, but let's be real, had never had anybody that could do the things that your son's done, and the run that those two have been on since 2017?
Well, I think there was two key components in that situation. I think the fact of being able to hook up with Andy Reid, somebody who was going to let him use his creativity and play the style of football that he liked to play. I think that's always big. And then the second for me, and could be the most important, was Alex Smith taking him under his wings and really showing him, how to be a pro, how to prepare as a pro, leaving the door up, hey, I'm going to be at the field at 5:30. You're welcome to join if you want to join or whatever. And teach him, the ins and outs of all the stuff you have to prepare to do to be a quarterback. As you saw in that quarterback series, one of the most important things they were talking about was the preparation before the game during the week of how to get prepared to play against, a good defense and know exactly how to read and figure out the exact, formations to get into and all that. And I think with Alex teaching him for a year, and I thanked Alex, several times during the season, because as a professional athlete, I know that all of them aren't like that, especially when you're trying to play the same position that they're playing. So,
right.
For him I think that set him ahead, a couple of years, because he learned how to do it from him. So when he got his chance, he hit the ground running because he had already been taught how to do it.
How did you and Pat's mother, because we know he was a three-sport standout at White House, and I've heard you tell the story about how it was kind of really his junior year, and there's been articles written about how his junior year, when he got to play quarterback, is kind of when everything changed. In today's hyper-intensive society where, you're talking about people are having their kids just specialize in one sport, you made sure that Pat played in all three. And even though it's been a decade since he was in high school, it seems like so much has changed in that time. What was your approach as a parent when it came to guiding Pat as an athlete when he was a kid?
Well, I kind of let him, choose his own thing. Pat was lucky at a young age. He developed his core friends, and they all played everything. They played basketball, football, baseball. And of course, I did the same thing as I was coming through, and that's the only thing we knew. You go from sport to sport. As soon as this season over, you start the next one. Yeah. And so as long as he was happy and didn't feel like, it was a burden, then he could play it. It was just a situation where you didn't want the kid to burn himself out, playing one sport, playing it all the time. And by the time, he get to high school or time to go to college, he's pretty much tired of it. So with Patrick, the baseball part, I knew he knew that part. I knew he knew the ins and outs of all that from, going to the stadium, watching all the other guys, the other professional athletes perform, and he knew all that. Basketball, he loved just like I did, to go out there and play basketball. And then football, once he got to be the quarterback, it clicked something there because he did not know the ins and outs of that position. He had played it his freshman year, and he was the backup his sophomore year, but he never played in the games. But his junior year, once he got to go out there, and how Texas football is, Friday night lights, and those stands are packed, and he's out there, running the show and flinging the ball all over the field. He just fell in love with it. So I knew it was going to be pretty tough to keep him away from playing football once that happened.
The one thing when you look at his career so far, 5 AFC championship games, 3 Super Bowls already. This is Pat Mahomes is a dude that really hasn't had, generally speaking, to face much adversity yet, right? Outside of some personnel stuff, and really you could argue maybe that, like you said, and you talked about it in another interview about the kneecap, which, miraculously, homeboy bounces back 3 games later. The ankle injury, which was a freak deal, and he bounces back, week after week. What kind of advice have you given Pat for if and when that does? Because it's going to happen. Hell, Tom Brady's every major athlete has faced it in some time in their career. we haven't seen that from Pat Mahomes yet, outside of just little injury dink and dunks here. What's been kind of, how do you, what are some of the things you walk him through and some of the things that you guys talk about? And how have those conversations changed from when he started, maybe at Texas Tech, or maybe when he started with the Chiefs, to where he's at now?
Well, it's a situation where, I mean, he knows that, more than likely that it's going to happen at some point in time. I mean, he had a little semi slump there. I think it was last year when he was throwing all the interceptions there.
Oh,
for
2 years ago. Yeah, absolutely.
2 years ago, throwing for like 3 or 4 games. And we just basically talked about, hey, it's a process. You got to, go on to the next play. And he does a pretty good job of, once he makes a mistake that, he keeps on going. He keeps on pumping it and throwing it. So you got to have a short memory. You got to have a short memory, especially when you play in that position. And that's kind of some of the stuff that I stress with him is that, hey, every play is a new play. We start a streak now. That one's over. Okay, let's go to the next. Let's go to the next. But there's going to be some times when he's going to struggle a little bit. And I think he has the mentality and knows that if he's out there grinding and putting in the work every day, that, things are going to change back and he's going to be fine. So it's big for him to go out and prepare every day and get himself ready and get his mind ready and to go out and lead grown men. And I think he does a great job of just doing that.
What's the biggest thing? Look, we're talking about a brand new group of receivers going into 2023. I've said that even though you did lose Tyreek last year, as long as you got number 87 in that supporting cast, you're still in pretty good shape. Although the Chiefs right now don't have anybody quite as accomplished as, say, what you had last year with the Juju Smith-Schuster or even a Mecole Hardman, who at the very least, even though he may not have been the most reliable, he at least knew the offense. Just kind of your early returns and your early thought process on what you've seen so far out of Pat with that with this new receiving group.
I think he's going to be fine. He's been throwing with the guys. He's been bringing them down, early in the year and getting some, rapport with them and running the routes and all that. The one thing that I've always said about my son, and I've said about it, since he was at Texas Tech or high school or whatever, it doesn't matter what number you have on your jersey. If you go out there and you run the routes and you get open, he's going to get you the ball. I mean, he's going to throw you the ball. He's going to throw the ball to the open man. So as long as these guys are out there running and going full speed and doing their routes, they're going to have a chance to make some plays. And he's gotten to a point where I think he's got the offense pretty much down packed. So now it's just a matter of, the receivers doing their thing and the line holding up, and he's going to distribute the ball to the playmakers and let them do what they do.
I will start winding this thing down. And Mr. Mahomes, like I said, I can't thank you enough for taking time out of your busy schedule to sit down with us here on the Big Chief Show. One thing, and again, this may be more just my own deal, but I'm just curious as to, when I was, again, being a Chiefs fan, everybody in Kansas City knows who Pat Mahomes and knows who Pat Mahomes Sr. is. But I feel like, for the superstardom and the stratospheric superstardom that your son has, I mean, let's call it what it is. I mean, he's mentioned regularly in the same breath as, a Messi or a LeBron James. I mean, to have your son mentioned in that same breath, I mean, it's not outlandish. But I'm just curious as to why we don't know more about his background and the work that was put in by Pat Mahomes Sr. and, your ex-wife to help make Pat Mahomes, the guy we see every day. I just feel like we haven't heard enough. And maybe that's the role you want, but I just feel like it's one of those deals where, would it be helpful from a parental standpoint for those of us out there that would love to know what went into making this guy?
Well, a lot of it is how he grew up. I think a lot of it is growing up in the clubhouse. Yeah. I started taking him to the clubhouse when he's 4 years old, and he got to see other professional athletes. He got to see how they prepared and how hard they worked and how they went about their business. And once he started seeing that on the regular and being around those guys and being around, me and my buddy LaTroy Hawkins and some of the other people, he never really needed a lot. He kind of, went about his business, didn't get in trouble. He made his grades and everything. And And me and his mom, we just kind of let him, be who he was. She was always big into, him treating everybody with the same respect as they treated them. So he never got to a place where he thought he was better than anybody else. I mean, he wanted the guy that was the worst player on the team. He wanted him to score just as much as his best friend who was on the team. So I just think he just stayed the course. It's not, it takes a village, man. He had some great coaches coming up. Cliff did a great job with it there at Texas Tech. Keeping him out of harm's way and making sure that everything was for a common goal. And I think he always wanted to be a professional athlete, so he just never, got off track. He just kept on grinding and grinding until, the goal was reached.
Is it true that, what was it? Was it after he got drafted or after he won their first Super Bowl that you called LaTroy and LaTroy lit up a congratulatory or celebratory Black and Mild?
Oh, yeah, that's true. He had a Black and Mild.
Now, is that a wood tip or the plastic? Because we do know there's a difference.
He had the plastic. And then he had a shot of Woodford. So, two things he normally doesn't drink is smoke a cigar or drink. So, yeah, he was a pretty proud guy. We got to attend the first Super Bowl together. The second one, he did not go. And this one right here, he wasn't able to make it. But, yeah, we've had fun.
Okay, fair enough. All right, last two things, then let you go. Number one, who was more bothered by the Joe Burrow smack before y'all finally clinched the deal in the AFC Championship game? You or Pat?
I think Patrick was probably more bothered by it, but he didn't show it, know. But it was definitely burning in him, and he wanted to make sure he take care of that. And actually, the Joe Burrow thing for me was I was actually bringing Patrick a cigar to smoke after that game if they beat him, to puff it or to light it up. But he kind of chickened out on me at the last moment, so I just went on and did it myself.
Yeah, you did. And and I'll tell you what, that was your viral moment. Old boy from the KSHB that was talking to you and smoking on that Joe Burrow, which again, as a Chiefs fan, and look, I still go down and say that the AFC Championship game loss to the Cincinnati Bengals that year before was, to me, the worst playoff loss in Chiefs history. Just for the simple fact that we were the better team and we should have won. So, it is what it is. But to be able to get back at them that following year, baseball-wise, who do you like winning the World Series?
Well, man, since the Mets are out, I'm rooting for the Rangers.
Boys. Oh, that's right. Because you played with the Rangers for.
Oh yeah, no doubt. And so I'm rooting for them. I mean, it's good to see them, having success that they're having. Seems like they got a pretty solid team. So if the pitching stays like it is, I think
that's
they have
the key,
a really
right?
Yeah, that's definitely the key. It's always the key with the Texas Rangers and the pitching.
Well, and let's not forget too, and you, like I said, you can appreciate this as much as anybody. I think we forget the impact that Bruce Bochy has had on that team this year.
Oh man, he's done a great job. I mean, he's got those guys really playing, the young guys as well as the old guys, and they, like I said, they're getting just enough pitching where they're able to go out there and compete every night, and that's all you could ask for is a chance to win the ball game, and they're going out as a team and playing hard. I mean, that up the middle combination, they got the little injury with the guy from Tech Young or whatever. He's got hurt, but everybody's stepping up and playing a role. Goes back to what we were saying earlier. Everybody's playing their role and going out there and going 1 through 9. So they're going to have a chance to do something special if they just keep it up.
Better basketball player, you or Pat?
Me.
Can you still give them buckets today?
Oh, no doubt.
Will Chris Jones be in camp, or I guess camp's over? Will he be in the lineup week 1?
I think so.
He's got to be, right? I mean, it's a no-brainer. Plus, that pass rush hasn't looked great the last few weeks. Last but certainly not least, what are you looking for outside of a return trip to the Super Bowl and your son's health? What are you most looking forward to this 2023 football season?
I just want to see the how it works with all the receivers. I think we got some good young receivers coming up. I think the Justin Ross kid is going to be good. I think the Rashee Rice kid is going to be good. I think Scott Moore is going to take a step up. Yeah. So I just want to see how all that blossoms and how that goes. I was actually pretty excited about all the quarterbacks the other day. I was able to go to the game, and all the quarterbacks look great. So hopefully Patrick's passing some knowledge to them too. And I just want to see all that, just come together and work.
Is there anything that you're working on right now? Any projects you got going on that, folks can check out or learn more about, or just kind of, like I said, we know you're on IG. Anything that they can help out with or follow along to learn more about the one, the only Mr. Pat Mahomes Sr.?
Well, not right now, but we got something in the works. So once that gets up and running, I'll be the first one to tell you about it.
My man, Mr. Mahomes, look, my hat's off to you. My hat's off to your family for raising a wonderful human being and your continued success as a father and everything you've done, not just for the Mahomes family, but just for families all over the world and for all of us Kansas City Chiefs fans as well.
Well, thank you for having me. Anytime, had a blast right here, and have a good day and go Chiefs.
Hey, shout out to your girl Linda, by the way, for helping me with this. She's been absolutely fantastic throughout all of this. And like I said, I know you're a busy guy. And once again, I can't thank you and Linda enough for coming through like this. I'm going to post this on either Wednesday or Thursday, and I will definitely give Miss Linda a heads up. Do you have any headshots or anything like that I can use, or where I can go to find one of you?
Yeah, I imagine you could probably just Google it, but I'll send Linda some stuff and she can send it over to you.
Beautiful, beautiful. Mr. Mahomes, God bless you, my friend.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hey, run that shit up, Chase.